Hello, the number of piercing clients that I have had that have said that they're more comfortable getting pierced with a gun than a needle is outrageous. I get it. A lot of people have a fear of needles and they think that the gun is quicker and easier and it's not going to hurt as much. But there are just so many issues with getting pierced with a gun. From a cleanliness standpoint, guns are really hard to clean in between uses. They are basically impossible to sterilize, and it's pretty rare that you see them actually properly sanitized. Not to mention the single-use ones, that's a lot of plastic and stuff to just be thrown away after one use, right? But even beyond issues such as potential infections and environmental waste, there are just some fundamental issues with getting pierced with a gun. Piercing guns use blunt force to push a piece of jewelry into your body, and this can cause its own series of issues, including a lot of unnecessary irritation and trauma to the body. What scares me the most with a piercing gun is when people use it to pierce their cartilage. See, cartilage is hard tissue that can shatter on impact. And when we consider the difference between a piercing gun and a piercing needle, a needle slices through skin, whereas a piercing gun uses a slightly sharpened, but not really sharp jewelry and a lot of blunt force to shove that jewelry into whatever part of flesh that you're trying to decorate. But I feel like the best way to demonstrate the difference between a piercing gun and a piercing needle is visual. So let's start with our gun. My fist is the gun and this ring is the jewelry. This piece of paper is your ear. So if we look at this, first of all, you can kind of see how crinkly that made the paper, but also it is not at all a clean split. It actually separated some of the layers of the paper, which is not ideal. This is not super unlike some of the slow-mo videos that I've seen of people getting pierced with piercing guns, where if you watch the backside, you can actually see the spray of flesh that is just sort of being thrown about after a piercing gun has done its thing. So let's say we get rid of this option. We swap our materials. Instead of a fist, we're going to be using a hand, a natural piercer's hand. And instead of piercing with the jewelry, which is not really sharpened, we're going to swap this jewelry out. And instead we're going to pierce with the needle, which is going to instead be illustrated by some kitchen utensils. And once again, here is your ear. So we're just going to go in. Okay, cool. I'm gonna get rid of that because, needles are single use. So in this case, I will fully admit that my knife needed to be sharpened, but I think the point still stands. We have a much cleaner tear here. And you also noticed that I had to move it to get it to tear all the way down. It only cut the part that I was trying to cut. That tear did not go beyond this very localized area. Personally, I would prefer this ear to this one. But that's just me. When it comes to piercing, I have never and will never use a piercing gun just because it causes so many unnecessary issues. I know some people feel personally more comfortable with a piercing gun, and I will always advise against it as much as possible. A needle, particularly a single-use sterilized needle, is always going to be your best option. Best way to think about it is a needle is causing a much smaller wound than what a piercing gun is doing, even if visually they look the same. And I mentioned this before, but cartilage especially does have a tendency to fracture under significant pressure. This is YouTube, so I can't really show you photos of it, but I feel like the paper gives you a sense of what to expect. I'm not saying all of this to try to scare you out of using a piercing gun. Although, if scaring you is working, I'm not mad. What's more important is being aware of the pros and cons, the risks and the benefits of going with a particular piercing method. I, and pretty much any reputable piercer, will recommend you against using piercing guns. That's not to say that everyone gets pierced with a gun has issues. Obviously, I had my lobes pierced with a gun way back in the day. The goal is to make sure that you are informed before you get a piercing. So now that that casual violence is out of the way, I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions that you would like me to address in a future video. And while you're down there, be sure to like this video, subscribe, because I post a new video on piercing every Friday, and whatever I'm doing on Wednesdays, it's whatever. And I will see you next time. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.